travel party. So where are we going to this month, ladies?
We are going down the Mississippi River on a cruise. We're going into the deep South, honey.
All right. I love it. Well, I'm going to duck behind the curtain. Got Karen Anton is here. Lots of people are checking in. So let's take that stroll down the Mississippi.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, and dear friends and new friends and people we haven't met yet, but we look forward to meeting. So it's going to be a wonderful domestic adventure today. And I want to just make sure to thank the people that are helping us so graciously. Steve Gurney, our wizard behind the curtain, who's handling so many conferences and meetings now with his professional talents. It's amazing. We're lucky he can stick with us. We're going to sort of switch our schedule. We used to meet the last Friday of the month, and now we see that we're going to have some conflicts. So we're going to try to make it the third Friday of every month. So keep that in mind, third Friday of every month. We want to thank our sponsors. First of all, I want to thank Rachel McLean at the Mather, and she has a nice little video to show you.
Hi, this is Cynthia Sidcup coming to you from the Mather in Tyson. So the Mather is a 62 and better community. And so I wanted to just give a quick little tour. The whole concept is the apartments is very open living space. There's a dining area here, the living area here, and really just a beautiful, beautiful kitchen, very well appointed, very thoughtfully designed. And it was a great community of athletic facilities, lap, pool, saltwater, which is great because I'm a swimmer. And we're really excited about what this community is going to be for us. Thanks.
Thank you. The Mather's brand new. It's just a nice, wonderful place to live in between trips, I think. And we have another great sponsor. He doesn't have a video, but I want to tell you that our travel agent, Anoop Mitra, has offered a wonderful Antarctic deal. He likes to let us know what the deals are. So anyone interested in going to Antarctica, let me know. It's like 2/3 of the price of every other trip. And it's on a wonderful company called Atlas with a private jet flight from Orlando to Ushuaia, and then the cruise ship to Antarctica next year, a year from now. So that's about it. We're ready to start off on our trip. Eileen's gonna lead the way down the Mississippi.
All right, let's set the scene here. There's the river. So I just want to tell you how this trip came about. My husband is a graduate of Washington University in St. Louis, and we got a brochure one day several years ago announcing a trip that they were organizing for a cruise down the Mississippi River. And we would be traveling with professors who would be sharing stories of the geology and the history of the place. And we would be joined also by professors from Brown and MIT and Carnegie Mellon. So it sounded like quite the educated crowd, and it would be kind of fun to learn all of these new things about a part of our own country, because frankly, we've spent most of our trips abroad. And so we signed on, and we flew to Memphis at the appointed date and took a cab over to the Peabody Hotel, a very sophisticated Southern Belle landmark. I'm having trouble for just a moment here.
Let's see. Try using the arrow keys on your keyboard. See if that works.
No. All right, I'm going to stop sharing. Sorry, folks. I'm just going to try and bring this back up another way. Okay. Okay, there we go. All
Well,
right, so welcome to the Peabody Hotel.
wait, we're not seeing anything.
You're not seeing it?
No, no,
Uh-oh.
so go share screen down at the
Okay.
bottom.
Okay, I'm gonna have to get out of this then.
And we're all used to things like this happening. It happens to all of us. There we go. Okay, we're sharing. So now go down to the bottom and click on that PowerPoint icon.
There we go.
There you go.
Okay, are we good?
Now start from the beginning.
Start my slideshow. Yes, sir.
Far left. There you go. Now let's see if it can advance.
Okay.
Click on it. There we go.
Thank you for your
Peabody
patience, everyone. Okay, here's the beautiful, beautiful Peabody Hotel. You may have heard that they have special residents. They have resident waterfowl, and every hour, every day around 4 or 5 in the afternoon, the duck master will bring an army of little ducks along a red carpet. You can see the red carpet to the left there, and they will climb up and swim in the pool while we all take a sip of our cocktail and enjoy the fun. And after about 20 minutes of paddling in the pool, the duck master gathers them up, and like a little army, they march out and down to the service elevator and up to their salon cages on the top floor. So the Peabody is lots of fun, and you can see how beautiful it is. All that beautiful paneled wood, and there's chandeliers and leaded glass, and the flower arrangements and beautiful furnishings. It's quite a lovely hotel. So after our ducks, we had another wonderful event that evening. We went across the street, simply walked out the door and across the street, and found ourselves at a baseball stadium. This is the home of the Memphis Redbirds. They're a AAA affiliate of the St. Louis Cardinals. It was just a perfect evening. There was a full moon. The breeze was blowing gently. The team was winning, and it's my favorite sport. And Marshall was rooting for his home team, so it all came together with a lovely evening. All right. The next day was, however, rainy, so it was time for some indoor entertainment, and we decided that we would go to the Rock and Roll Museum. This is a main, sorry. Right. Okay, so the Rock and Roll Museum has been run by the Smithsonian Institution, and it's really one of Memphis's iconic showcases. It was as good as the baseball game to me. We met the birth of rock and roll with a walk through the multiple exhibits that introduced us to legends like Jerry Lee Lewis and Elvis Presley, and other pioneers whose love of music overcame racial and socioeconomic barriers to create the music that shook the world. Each exhibit came with this big button, which when pushed, brought one ear to ear with that particular legend. And of course, they were accompanied by pictures. And you're asking me now, well, who is famous in this picture? And my answer is actually nobody. This was a picture I took because the little girl on the left reminded me of myself when I was her age. So, we had a good time at the Rock and Roll Museum. And then we went from there to another famous landmark, the National Civil Rights Museum. That's actually a complex of buildings that trace the history of the civil rights movement right from the 17th century up to the present. The museum is built around the former infamous Lorraine Motel, site of the assassination of Martin Luther King. You can view that second-story balcony where he was murdered and feel the passion of that time. Well, the main museum is located on the south edge of downtown Memphis. It's on Mulberry Street. And of special interest there to me was this exhibit that features a replica of the US Supreme Court room where the oral argument was heard in 1954 in the seminal Brown versus the Board of Education. The court there ruled that segregation in public schools was unconstitutional and changed life in America's classrooms. We had another visit with the ducks at cocktail time, after which we were taken to Beale Street, world famous for its blues clubs and barbecue restaurants. Our party was seated in a brick-walled basement of the City Cafe, a popular destination for Southern comfort food and barbecue. They set the table with paper placemats and plenty of paper napkins, as the sweet and tangy pork ribs, large catfish fillets with a homemade tartar sauce, okra, corn on the cob, coleslaw were pushed down the table. We wanted to know what made Memphis style barbecue distinct, and there was the answer on the menu. The ribs were slow cooked in a pit, and the ribs could be prepared either dry or wet. Dry ribs were covered with a dry rub consisting of salt and various spices, and they could be smoked in just a few hours. Wet ribs barbecue, on the other hand, was used for denser cuts of meat, and they took about 6 to 8 hours to cook. As the staff said, the secret was in the sauce, and they weren't telling. So the next day we had an appointment with our boat, but first we had a bus tour through the town, which included a stop outside St. Jude Hospital for Children, founded in 1962 by entertainer Danny Thomas. This pediatric treatment and research facility focuses on children's catastrophic diseases, particularly leukemia and cancer. We learned that the hospital costs about $2.8 million a day to run, but the patients are not charged for their care. From there, we moved on to Graceland, home of you-know-who, Elvis Presley. It's a Yellowstone mansion with a small airplane parked to the side. Elvis actually didn't interest us much, so we strolled the small park across the street and listened later to our fellow travelers describing his costumes and instruments. And apparently the mansion even had a chapel, which came as a surprise.
We have another surprise for you all. I think Steve has a poll. Let's see if you all can click on the right answer. Steve, are you there with it?
Hope that's the right one.
It is. Speaking of music.
All right, so which of these was not written about the Mississippi River? Old Man River, When the Levee Breaks, High Water Everywhere, Proud Mary, O Shenandoah, or Showboat the Musical?
All right, and we will, I like to let it get to over half. So we're over half. Let's see, the ticker keeps on going though. Wow, it's got 60. Okay, looks like it's slowing down. We're at 70%. So I'm going to end that polling and share the results and let us know. Did they get it right?
All right. Oh, Shenandoah. Did you know that was written about the Missouri? Oh, Shenandoah is the correct answer. Congratulations.
All right.
Oh, thank you for that little piece of fun.
Okay.
That's awesome. Okay, are you ready to follow me onto the ship, guys? Because this was the best part of the whole trip, the ship. So we rolled down to the river around 3 p.m., got off the bus, and there before us was as pretty a boat as one will ever see. Uh-oh, what's happening?
Did our poll stop us at Graceland
Yes,
there?
it did.
Yeah.
Is it something
okay,
you can fix, or do I need to go back again?
I think you got to do your thing
Okay.
again.
So let's see.
Yeah, maybe we could pull up should we pull up another poll while we're waiting?
Yeah, what if you, well,
You want to do that?
maybe.
Well, wait, hold on. It might add
Yeah.
some more complexity to
It
the,
might.
okay. So let's see if it works now. Can you advance?
No, it did not work.
Shoot.
Okay, I'm gonna.
Uh,
So Steve, if I go back to share screen, yes,
yeah, share screen.
and hit share. Stuck.
Okay, press the escape button on
Yeah,
your.
I did. And it's not doing anything. Oh, well, stop
Okay.
share. I have to do stop share first.
Yeah, so what I would do is go to the PowerPoint, click on it if you can. We don't see it right now. See if you can press escape and get to the, like where you can,
Here we go. We're in. Okay. Here is,
so now, no, now you gotta do share screen again.
oh, okay. Oh,
This is great. Sheila has a great sense of humor. She says, you should not have said Graceland didn't interest you. Elvis is in the room.
yeah. Come up and they call it.
I like that, Sheila.
All right.
Okay. Share screen.
I'm gonna go to slideshow.
No, you got to share screen.
Okay.
I knew it was one of those weeks where I should have asked you to email me the PowerPoint.
I guess I have a copy of it.
If you can email it to me, Pat,
Okay.
then if we get stuck again, I can bring it up.
Okay.
Okay, so you should be able to share screen, hit the share screen button, Eileen.
I can't get to the share screen button. My problem.
You,
Okay, here we go.
okay, now, yep, there we go. And now if you start your
Slideshow,
slideshow
the beginning.
there, and then click.
Okay, I think.
So we last left our heroes in Graceland. Okay, so now
All
next.
right, fine. Okay, I promise you it was worth the wait. Here is the beautiful American Queen. It is a 6-story, gorgeously appointed ship with a fabulous red wheel at the back, and you'll see rows of balconies of staterooms on the top levels there. So we got there around 3 o'clock, and we wanted to make sure that we had dressed for the occasion. And so this is the time when we all get out our Southern hats and our fancy purses and walk on board. Okay, everybody ready? Okay, so one of my favorite rooms on this ship was, of course, the library. And here it is. The room had these beautiful 10-foot high stacks of books, chandeliers around the room, beautiful paneling, small carrels of cushioned chairs. It was a perfect showstopper. There were other gorgeous rooms on the ship as well, and some of them were small but wonderful. For instance, there was a gentleman's salon where they could go and in olden days smoke their cigars. I'm not sure that the ship allowed that anymore, but it was definitely a touch of yesteryear. And of course, the ladies had their opposite. The ladies' salons allowed ladies to bring their needlework or chat or play cards, and beautifully appointed. So on the deck, on the top deck, there was an open pavilion that was set with a bar and a small stage for late night entertainment. And it was also home to a calliope This one was comprised of 33 steam whistles. Once launched, the sound changed keys frequently, growing quirky and then falling flat due to the fact that the pipes were operated by live superheated steam. There was an engine room that you could tour down below. There was a map room above. There was just a lot to see on the ship. And our bedroom was simply gorgeous. It was spacious, done up with lacy linens. And every morning, a maid knocked and served us our wake-up coffee on a tray placed on the bed. Sometimes we would walk it out to our private stretch of deck and commune with the rising sun. I like to spend breakfast in the cafeteria, which catered to informal dining. This area joined the fabulous Front Porch Cafe, situated at the front of the ship, and its open area was dotted with tables, hammocks, and settees hung by chains. It was a great place to enjoy lunch, read a book, or just catch the breeze. Dinner found us in the elegant dining room, where damask curtains lined the walls, waiters hovered, and Southern culinary traditions were served up on china plates, like bring on the cornbread and the grits. So let me take a moment to talk about our evening entertainments. This was the Victorian theater on the ship. Unhappily loaded with luggage, as you see it now, but usually filled with audience. And every night they packed us in for a delightful array of performances. Among them was this fantastic recreation of the Memphis $1 Million Quartet of Jerry Lee Lewis, Elvis Presley, Johnny Cash, and Carl Perkins. Lewis attacked the keys like a madman, sometimes standing up to better crash down on the ivories. Presley lookalikes are common enough, but the Cash impersonator was really quite believable. And the Carl Perkins impersonator filled in the rural flavor of the Southern rockabilly tunes, including his own composition, Blue Suede Shoes. Do y'all remember that one? The post-theater fun continued at the lounge and the bar outside the dining room, where sing-alongs were the rage. One always sings better after some drinks, don't you think? This being a Washington University alumni trip, we would enjoy several lectures from renowned university faculty members traveling with us. But first up was one from the ship's own riverologist, a specialty we didn't even know existed. She started with the name itself.
Mississippi. Mississippi was the French rendering of the Ojibwe and Algonquian name for the river, which they pronounced Mississippi, meaning great river. So the name has ancient language from the tribes that lived along its banks for thousands of years. The Mississippi is second only in size to Hudson Bay, the drainage system on the American continent, and ranks as the world's fourth largest river. Its rippling headwaters at Lake Itasca in northern Minnesota grow as it travels south, a journey of 2,320 miles to the Gulf of Mexico. On its journey, the river dissected regions of north and south and east and west. It suckered civilizations which stretch back from today to 5,000 years ago, such as the Mound builders, notably in Cahokia, Illinois. It nourished the flat plains of the Mississippi Delta farms. In the 19th century, during the height of the ideology of manifest destiny, the Mississippi and several of its western tributaries served as pathways for the western expansion of the United States. These watery highways birthed cities such as St. Louis and Memphis.
These kinds of stories were on our itinerary throughout the coming week. Our first major stop was Vicksburg, site of one of the Civil War's seminal battles, now retold by one of our traveling professors.
The city's location atop a high bluff overlooking the Mississippi River was deemed impregnable to assault by federal troops. General Ulysses Grant, in a daring effort, had his engineers reroute a portion of the river, positioning his Union Navy abreast of the city, while his Union forces surrounded Vicksburg on all sides. During the ensuing 47-day siege, most of the city's residents abandoned their homes and sought shelter in caves dug into the hillside. The city was finally starved into submission. Grant's victory captured the South's ultimate supply line, the river, and marked a turning point toward ultimate victory for the North.
So we traveled into town to a house famous for its Civil War connections. Balfour House sits on a prominent corner of Crawford and Cherry Streets, set amidst green lawns and gardens. It was built in 1835, a red brick antebellum mansion mixing Greek Revival and Federalist styles. The furnishings were typical and lovely, but the home story was not.
On the night of December 24, 1862, Balfour House hosted a grand Christmas ball that included many Confederate soldiers and their ladies. During the evening, a telegraph collected by a Colonel Fall across the river delivered news of the approach of General Grant's army. The weather was cold and stormy. The river was dangerously turbulent, and the only available transport across to Vicksburg was a small skiff. It would mean risking his life, but Colonel Fall felt compelled to deliver the critical information to the generals attending the ball. Shortly after midnight, an exhausted, mud-covered Colonel Fall burst into Balfour House and delivered the news to General Smith, who announced loudly, "This ball is at an end. The enemy is coming down river. All non-combatants must leave the city." The men had only seconds to bid loved ones goodbye as they rushed away and reported to the station. Thus began the 47-day siege, during which time Miss Balfour refused to join the cave dwellers and remade the house into a hospital for Confederate wounded.
I've noticed in my travels that local histories are full of interesting stories that somehow never made it into the history books. In 1835, for instance, the quaintly named mural excitement had Vicksburg citizens, tired of rough-edged gamblers, capturing and hanging 5 of them as retribution for having killed a local doctor. It was one of the deadliest outbreaks of extra-legal violence in the slave states prior to the Civil War. Another story involved Vicksburg's pre-European residents, the Choctaw Indians. After the area became property of the United States, some Choctaw remained in Mississippi, citing the Treaty of Dancing Rabbit Creek, and thus winning citizenship. Indians morphing into citizens? That's not in the history books. Well, like many other tribes, their story was one of struggle, as they tried to maintain their culture against the pressure of the binary slave society, which classified people as only white or black. Each day we woke up to a new town, but the overlay was the same. To me, a northerner, this trip into the deep South was as exotic as an African safari, but this one draped in antebellum traditions and racial tensions. Our next Southern adventure would bring us to Natchez, once home to an Indian tribe of the same name. Established by French colonists in 1716, Natchez was one of the oldest and most important European settlements in the lower Mississippi River Valley.
Natchez is generally recognized for its role in the development of the Old Southwest during the first half of the 19th century. This was on account of the Natchez Trace, an historic forest trail which extended roughly 440 miles from Nashville to Natchez and on to Cumberland and the Tennessee and Mississippi rivers. The trace was the only reliable land link between the eastern states and the trading posts of Mississippi and Louisiana. All sorts of people traveled down the trace itinerant, preachers, highwaymen, traders, and peddlers among them. As with much of the unsettled frontier, banditry regularly occurred along the trace. Highwaymen such as John Morrell and Samuel Mason terrorized travelers along the road. They operated with large gangs of organized brigands in one of the first examples of land-based organized crime in the United States. Meriwether Lewis died on the trace, whether murdered or by others or by his own hand was uncertain.
So the trace brought commerce, and by the middle of the 19th century, the city had attracted wealthy Southern planters of cotton and sugarcane. All of them built mansions to fit their ambitions. During the Civil War, the city surrendered to Union forces without a shot, keeping its lovely streets intact for posterity. It is still recognized as a focal point for heritage tourism, which now included me. The big thing to see in Natchez was Stanton Hall, an antebellum classical revival mansion at 401 High Street. It actually commanded an entire 2-acre city block, and it was built in the 1850s by a cotton trader who wanted to replicate his home in Belfast, Ireland. The white 2-story brick structure featured a 2-story Greek temple portico. These days, it was operated as an historic house museum by the Pilgrimage Garden Club. We came to understand that garden clubs were one of the mainstays of Southern culture. And the president of the local garden club wielded as much influence as a mayor. She, it was always a she, was the head of the female population.
All right. And that's just a cue for Steve to come up with a poll for our audience and see how they do on this one. I don't know if they can do as well as they did on the first one. Okay, so the Mississippi River touches all but which of these states? Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, Illinois, Ohio, Missouri, Kentucky, Tennessee, Arkansas, Mississippi. It touches all of them except for one. Can you pick it out?
Right, and let's see. We're going up. We got 30%, 32%, 40, 45%, 47, 50. All right, 50% of the people have voted. Let's see if it moves a little bit more. Looks like 52, it's slow at 55, 57. Let's see if we can get to 60 and then I'll show the results. Couple more of you. There we go, 60. Here is the results. Did they get it right?
Oh, look at that. They did. Boy, you're a smart group. I wouldn't have known this from a hole in the wall. I thought this was great. You got it. It is Ohio. We stuck in Ohio just to throw you off, but it didn't. Congratulations.
My, oh, my, oh, my, oh, why didn't it touch Ohio?
Okay, now let's see if Eileen can advance her slide.
Yeah, let's see if this works. No, I'm stuck
Oh,
again.
okay.
All right.
So at least we know
stop
how
there.
we can get back there. So
All right, help me out. I don't always remember. I'm going to stop sharing.
stop share, get out of your
Escape.
Yeah, escape out of it so that it's not in slide mode. And then go back and share again.
Okay.
Oh, let's see. I think you're going to need to, I think you need to like like get out of the slide.
I
Like,
do.
yeah, so now, oh, we've got a couple of hands being raised. So while Eileen's figuring that out, I got Carolyn and Mike have raised their hands. I don't know if they were just playing around with their button, but if either one of you wanted to say something or share something while we're playing with our,
Yeah, I think, Steve, I've seen this before. Somehow I think her mouse is in the control at the top of the screen. Try clicking your mouse in the slide and see if you can advance it then.
okay.
You are a
There.
wonder. Thank you.
I
Woohoo.
All
know
right,
I know
Mike.
that's Mike Mulroney,
My
fantastic.
hero.
Yeah, anytime you have problems with a PowerPoint, it's probably because your mouse is stuck in the top of the control panel somehow. Always just click your mouse in the slide and hopefully that'll do it.
Thank you, Mike. That was great.
All
All
right,
right.
Mike. Great
So-
job. Thank you.
So we are heading into Baton Rouge. We're going into Louisiana now,
Oh, hey, Eileen, before
Yeah.
you keep on going,
right?
Joanne Schwab has a really good question. What time of
Oh.
year were you there?
In May.
Okay, great.
Yeah. All right. We entered Louisiana heading for its capital. And this was an interesting story about how Baton Rouge got its name. The name is a French name meaning red stick. Well, Pat.
Baton Rouge comes from the Mississippian culture that took root around 800. The story goes that two tribes, the Huma and the Bayagula, inhabited these tribal hunting grounds, and rather than go to war over property rights, they planted a 30-foot high red stick adorned with blood and fish bones as their declared mutual border.
You know, nearing Baton Rouge, the rural landscape disappeared on us. It was replaced by these giant petrochemical tanks, one of the capital's major industries. We had entered the port of Greater Baton Rouge, the 10th largest in the US in terms of tonnage shipped. As we passed underneath the UEP Long OK Allen Bridge, we learned that it played a role in building the ports and the city's stature. Governor Long had directed the bridge to be built at a low height, thus preventing big tankers from making their way upriver past Baton Rouge. Clever man. Well, unlike New Orleans, Baton Rouge sits on a bluff upriver from the Mississippi River, and this allowed development of a business corridor safe from seasonal flooding. Medical, research, technology, and motion picture industries all moved in, and so did academia. Baton Rouge is home to Louisiana State University and also Southern University, the flagship institution of the Southern University system, the only historically Black college system in the nation.
The city has a unique history and populace. It was ruled by 7 different governments, beginning with French, British, Spanish, in the colonial area. It then became the Republic of West Florida, establishing inter alia, a constitution, legislation, raising an army, all within 18 months. It then became a United States territory and a state, left to join the Confederacy, and became a state again after the Civil War. It became the home of choice for immigrants from numerous European and African nations. Islam is now the second most represented religion after Catholicism.
Well, all of this produced a city with a culturally rich center that got the attention of its political leaders. And in 1846, the state legislature designated Baton Rouge as Louisiana's new capital to replace sinful New Orleans. They built a new capital, and this was the first stop on today's tour. We crossed a block-long park as we approached the capital, and before us was this building in neo-Gothic style, complete with turrets, crenellations, and stained glass. At 450 feet, It is the tallest capitol in the US and often referred to as a monument to Senator and Governor U.E.P. Long. The building, of course, came with a view overlooking the mighty Mississippi. You know, as we wandered the halls, one of our party inquired about the state's unique legal system based on Napoleonic laws. And the guide explained that the differences apply mostly to law between private sector parties, usually contracts and torts. All of the lawyers in the group nodded sagely. Our second stop that day was the governor's mansion. This was a large Greek revival edifice built in the 1960s and modeled on Oak Alley, a plantation we would later visit. Our tour helped define the word large. This mansion consisted of, get out your scorecards, 12 bedrooms, 18 baths, 2 kitchens and 1 kitchenette, 2 dining rooms, 1 breakfast room, a receiving room for state affairs, and another for routine business, a living room, a sitting room, 2 butleries, 2 security stations for the state troopers assigned to the mansion, and 2 offices, 1 for the governor and 1 for a secretary, along with a dramatic spiral stairway in the rotunda. Well, one of my favorite stories on the trip attaches to this house. There was a Louisiana governor named Jimmy Davis who built this current mansion. Well, Davis was also a musician who composed the song, "You Are My Sunshine." Well, it turns out that Sunshine was his horse, and so loved by the governor that he occasionally brought Sunshine into the mansion. This led to Wags commenting that it was the only time a governor's ass had occupied the house. Our next port of call was a town I had never heard of, St. Francisville. Residents called it the town 2 miles long and 2 yards wide because it was developed atop a narrow ridge overlooking the Mississippi.
St. Francisville became the commercial and cultural center of the surrounding plantation country, and then got a promotion. In 1810, it served as the capital of the Republic of West Florida. I hadn't known there was a Republic of West Florida. Area planters had ousted the Spanish government and had set up their own independent republic for 74 days before being annexed by the US. Some Jewish immigrants fleeing religious persecution in Germany settled here and made important contributions to commerce in the lean years following the Civil War. Becoming successful merchants, they provided the credit when the banks failed and built the impressive Victorian homes that marched down the town's main streets.
Grace Episcopal Church seemed to be the only tourist attraction that day. The 19th century building is famous for its stained glass windows and its large cemetery. Here, one encountered an interesting assortment of residents ranging from Marine Commandant Robert Barrow to a man known as the Baton Rouge serial killer. One tombstone recognized Confederate officer William Walter Leake, who magnanimously arranged for the burial here of a Union Navy officer in connection with the Union blockade of the Mississippi. St. Francisville still reenacts a 3-day commemoration of this incident named The Day the War Stopped. So one day we got off the boat where there was no town. The only clue to a site worthy of tourist interest was a bridge across the creek we had entered and a path that turned into a copse of trees. We had arrived at Oak Alley, a sugarcane plantation designed by wealth and built by slaves. Access to the property had its own sense of pageantry. A canopy of giant old oak trees delivered us to a red brick walkway that in turn led to a magnificent white 6-columned home trimmed with black wrought iron balconies. The artifacts within accented the opulence enjoyed by the family named Roman. I remember there was a silver roast cover to keep the meat warm over a several-hour dinner. There was a walking stick that concealed a thin sword. We saw a doll's armoire, a rich creation built of rosewood and white marble. As our guide moved us outside to view the slave quarters and gardens, he told us that the house even came equipped with its own ghost. Another guide, Pete Douglas, had been giving a tour of the mansion when a candlestick inexplicably flew across the room. One employee claimed to have seen empty chairs rocking in unison, while another heard a child crying and the sound of horses. Are we brave enough to do another poll, or should we keep going?
Let's keep going.
Okay, so the fantasy trip down the Mississippi has come to an end. We are pulling up this morning to dock in New Orleans, the finale to an amazing week-long dip into life in the Deep South. New Orleans, a city built on the backs of varying cultures, was its own unique celebration, evidenced in its love of entertainment and spectacle, culminating, of course, in Mardi Gras. We had visited several times before. We had explored the hidden alleys of the French Quarter, enjoyed the pleasures of Preservation Hall and the impromptu musical parades. I knew what I wanted our first stop to be this time. Café du Monde. World famous for its Cajun mix of chicory and coffee and its sugary, square-shaped, deep-fried French beignets. Second stop was our hotel, the Bienvenue House Hotel, located on Decatur Street in the middle of the French Quarter. With our luggage parked, we took a 6-minute stroll over to an unusual tourist attraction. The phrase "cities of the dead" was first used by Mark Twain to describe the historic cemeteries of New Orleans.
St. Louis Cemetery, New Orleans' most famous, was awash in above-ground burial chambers with full menu of styles: box tombs, step tombs, oven tombs, wall and block vault tombs, the latter with 4 individual chambers stacked one on top of the other. Jazz festivals were where the city's African Americans formed brass bands to accompany the coffin to its final resting place. The tomb of the cemetery's most famous resident is Marie Laveau. Have you heard of Marie Laveau? She's the New Orleans voodoo queen. Laveau was a free woman of color, a blend of Native American, African, and French descent. She worked as an herbalist, of course, and midwife, but her historic reputation rested on the volatile mix of Native American and African spiritualism she delivered to the colored peoples. Louisiana Creole, a French-based patois, now considered endangered, she used as her liturgical language, the patois. One voodoo tale had her partnered with a snake she named Zombie after an African god. Another had her ghost wandering around the tombs. Residues of recent offerings were much in evidence as her influence remains current.
So already having a tourist familiarity with the French Quarter, we chose to roam a bit the next day. It was back to the boats as we boarded a small motor skiff for a tour through the winding bayous in these nearby yet remote cypress swamps. Our daring do young guide kept company with the alligators here, and he had even named some. He knew their rendezvous points as well, and he kept bags of marshmallows in anticipation of their meeting. Sure enough, they showed up gliding over to the boat where Daring Do actually put a piece of meat in his mouth and lowered himself halfway to the water where the gator delicately removed the dangled meat. I don't think you could pay me enough for that job. Well, afterwards, we visited Laura Plantation. This is a plantation home of vastly different architecture than Oak Alley up the river. This Creole architecture featured a raised basement, a full front porch that is reminiscent of the Caribbean islands with its offset front doors. The floor plan consists of 2 rows of 5 rooms that all open directly into each other without any hallways, thus maximizing air circulation. Our Creole host was the resident owner, a charming middle-aged fellow with a slight French accent. He described for us the differences between Louisiana's Cajun and Creole peoples. Creole was a large mixed nation with French, Spanish, and African roots, whereas Cajuns were Acadian descendants mixed with Spanish, Anglo-American, and Germans. Cajuns tended to be rural folk and more religious than their Creole counterparts. At lunchtime, we searched out the place said to have New Orleans' best po' boy sandwich, piled with lettuce, tomato, and pickles, and filled with things like roast beef or fried shrimp, oysters, or whatever you choose. Po' boys are stuffed and slathered with sauce or mayonnaise, and then served up between 2 long pieces of French bread. We had a chance to better examine the cultural cuisine that same evening. We had signed up for a cooking class in a slightly frumpy townhouse on the edge of the quarter. Our hosts were serving hors d'oeuvres and a glass of bubbly in the front parlor while they introduced us to Cajun cuisine, a blend of West African, French, and Spanish cooking techniques. Cajun cooking is sometimes referred to as a rustic cuisine since its preparation is relatively simple. An authentic Cajun meal is usually a 3-pot affair, with 1 pot dedicated to the main dish, andouille sausages or crayfish and shrimp, those are popular, 1 dedicated to steamed rice, and the 3rd containing at least what they term the trinity of vegetables, green bell peppers, onions, and celery. Introductions over, we proceeded to the large kitchen and seated ourselves along a long bar to watch the action. Our 2 cooks took turns introducing their dishes, and by evening's end, we had a grasp on cooking gumbo with its holy trinity of onions, peppers, and tomatoes. We already knew about Southern biscuits and fried chicken, but they were especially delicious just out of the oven. Treats at the end were pralines and bananas Foster, possibly my all-time favorite dessert. I left full and happy. So the next day, we continued our roam, heading to Museum Row at the north end of town. The National Museum of Art roamed as well, serving up Native American, African, Asian, pre-Columbian, courtly French, and some very modern temporary exhibits. Later, we enjoyed an hour's stroll through the Sidney and Walda Besthoff Sculpture Garden, a collection of more than 60 contemporary and modern sculptures by world-class artists such as Henry Moore and Gaston Lachaise. This one here is by Yinka Shonabari. The gardens behind the museum held a special treat for children of all ages, a miniature railway town built around a young and bygone New Orleans. Apparently, we were feeling boat deprived again because late that afternoon, we signed up for a ride on the Natchez, another authentic steamship with yet another calliope. The Natchez cruised the length of the city twice daily, and it proved a perfect way to rest our feet after all of our museum explorations. It also gave us an opportunity to observe the extent of the restoration taking place on the waterfront following the devastations of Hurricane Katrina just a few years earlier. We had saved the best for last. The World War II Museum is truly a world-class operation, delivering one of the best museum experiences we have ever had. The museum's mission is to tell the story of the American experiences in the war that changed the world, why it was fought, how it was won, and what it means today, so that all generations will understand the price of freedom and be inspired by what they learn. Recalling stories told by my dad, who served in World War II, I thought my grasp of the subject competent, but I was exposed to a whole new dimension of history through the amazing audiovisual presentations of those who fought. There was Kermit Tyler describing his experiences as a radar officer at Pearl Harbor in the moments leading up to the Japanese air attack. There was a soldier named David Roderick discussing his experiences after going ashore on Utah Beach on D-Day. There were stories of the men that served in the U.S. Army's All-Mexican American Combat Unit, firsthand accounts of the assault on Monte Cassino, and the waters that ran red in the Battle of the Coral Sea. I felt like I had absorbed a semester's worth of new information in the hour-long tour. All I could say was, wow. We topped off the wow with dinner at the museum's restaurant, renowned for its chef, John Besh, a former Marine and restaurateur well known for his efforts in preserving the culinary heritage of New Orleans cuisine. Later, we wandered the gift shop where they sold vintage clothing from the 1940s. The World War II experience was another notch in our New Orleans visit, and I found the entire trip equated to some kind of time travel. We had moved through ancient Indian cultures, European settlements, antebellum lifestyles, Confederate battles, Creole traditions, and searing tales of a modern war, all amidst the backdrop of one of the world's great rivers. The life of the Deep South was so different, I felt like I had entered a different country. It reminded me that we are a nation of nations. I bid adieu to the American Queen and open the discussion. Hello, everyone.
I don't know. I want to quiz this brilliant audience with another couple polls. What do you think?
Sure, go for it. I'm going to take the screen away so you can do whatever you want.
Got their questions, getting them ready for you. Okay, we mentioned this number. I wonder if who remembers it. The Mississippi River is how many miles long?
Okay, let's see. We got here. We're at about 40%, 43. Okay, we got over half. Let's see how they did. They get it right?
I did.
Hey.
All right.
Good job, gang.
And you want the last one?
Sure.
What is the longest river in the, all right.
Oh, this is a duh. Let me know if anyone doesn't get it.
All right. They got it.
Yeah. All right. No squeakers there.
No, it's the Missouri.
Oh, you're kidding me.
The Missouri is the longest. Look it up.
Oh, okay. Well, nobody got it right. Okay. Let's see.
Mississippi is the mightiest, but the Missouri is the longest.
Oh, good one, Pat. Really good one. Yeah. You fooled me and Eileen, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Let's see. So here, let's see. We got whose hand is raised here? Carl. Carl, did you have a question or a comment you wanted to share? And then we could start bringing people over. Carl?
Well, I just wanted to say that our son is a brigadier general in the Marine Corps Reserves, and the headquarters are in New Orleans. So we've been there many times. So when you go there, there are each float in the Mardi Gras parade is sponsored by a group, and they have fundraisers during the year. There will be a fundraiser whenever you go to New Orleans. So try to go to one of those fundraisers if you can. It's a lot of fun. And the best restaurants are not in central New Orleans. They're on the outskirts of New Orleans.
I agree with that completely.
Wonderful.
And the battle site, 1815 Battle of New Orleans, was won by General Jackson, which ended the War of 1812. And that's a site to visit. And Degas spent some time in New Orleans, and the Degas House is another place to visit. So there's just a few comments on New Orleans.
Oh, thank you, Carl.
Great. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move everybody over to party mode. And if you want to share your video, you can. If you don't, you don't have to, but I'll just get you all over there, and then we can have our little party. Okay. They're starting to pop in. All right.
Oh, okay. That's
Yeah, so when you get prompted over, you just need to turn your mic and camera off. Well, this was a good one, guys.
Well, thank you. It was fun. Has anybody traveled down the Mississippi?
Yes, I have many times.
Did you do the American Queen?
No, we did the Mississippi Queen and the Delta Queen, which is now
Okay.
an historic site.
I think it's the same company, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
American Steamboat Company. Yeah.
Yeah.
We grew up on the banks of the Mississippi in Cape Girardeau, Missouri.
Okay. Okay. I know somebody else who grew up in Cape Girardeau, and they're in our Rotary Club.
And what's their name?
Her name now is Teresa Rutledge. I don't know what her maiden name was.
Interesting.
Ah. Well, I thought that the ship was so gorgeous that it was kind of an inverse way of traveling. Normally, I spend my time out on the land and use the ship just as a bedroom opportunity. Here, I used the land as an accent to life on the ship. I just loved the ship. It was a stunner.
Hi there, Karen Bruchet here. I was excited to see this journey because my daughter lives in Vicksburg, Mississippi, where she's with the Army Corps of Engineers there. So we've been kind of doing some sightseeing around the area. And the fun backstory is that my husband and my children are Chickasaw. They have an ancestor on the Dawes Roll, and so there's Chickasaw. So anytime we go down there, we try to hit the Natchez Trace. And his great grandfather, can't remember how many greats back, had a stand at mile marker 283 in Tennessee. 382, just right by the Meriwether Lewis death site. He was they were a mile and a half away, but the Natchez Trace has so many interesting stories about the Chickasaws and the other indigenous people that lived in the area. So it was exciting to see this story. Thank you all.
Oh, you're very welcome. I learned so much about our country on this trip, as perhaps you heard over the course of the presentation. Yeah, it's a different world down there, but wonderful stories.
Yeah.
We would like to say that this is a good book if you want to know more about the Mississippi River.
Nice, thank you.
Oh, Mad River.
Yeah.
Yep.
What was your time like on the river?
Sorry.
Growing up by the river?
Well, I was just wondering what the experience was actually on the ship that they took.
Oh, on the ship.
But I'd be interested in your life on the river too, of course.
Sometimes in terms of size, sometimes the river seemed just incredibly wide, and sometimes you felt like you could relate to the shoreline. So it varied in that respect. And it went through very rural countryside where you didn't see anything, and then you had its opposite when you arrived in Baton Rouge with the huge petrochemical tanks lining the waterfronts. It was a very urban look. So lots of variety.
Did you have a lot of awake time on the river as well as all the tours? I mean, it looks like you spent your time doing a lot of touring.
I would say that we probably were off the boat maybe 5 hours a day.
Okay.
So we had a lot of nice time on the boat. I loved the porch with the hammocks, and I would go there and with my
I'll
book.
bet.
Oh, that was just great. And the Victorian theater was amazing.
Mhm.
The library is gorgeous. The salons were quirky, wonderful. The dining room was very elegant. We had tours of the engine room and the map room, and the top level with the open bar was fun. And our service, morning coffee served on a tray in your bed, is really just opulent.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Well, we had a little story we could share. We were in New Orleans about 3.5 years ago, and we stayed in a bed and breakfast Airbnb in Treme. And you know, the first day we got there, we went out and did some touring around, and we got back, and the proprietor had a guest, one of the neighbors who was over there. And he said, first thing, we never met him before. He said, first thing I got to tell you is you got to say a prayer. I said, okay. And we were there the week after Fats Domino died. And it turned out this neighbor was the son of Dave Bartholomew, who was the trumpeter in the Fats Domino band.
Oh my gosh.
Also was the one that co-wrote Ain't That a Shame with Fats Domino. And we were able to sit down with him for about an hour and a half, 2 hours, and just chat. And, you know, his father was still alive at the time. His father was 99 and was born on Christmas Eve, Dave Bartholomew, but he has passed away since. But we were able to hear some interesting stories. And I can also back up the World War II Museum was amazing. We really enjoyed that.
One of the funniest recollections I have of New Orleans, on another trip with my daughter Caitlin and her husband, we were down in the French Quarter, just coming out of some restaurant and for dinner, and there was this hubbub going on down the street, and we stopped and stared, and what do you know, there was like a pickup parade that suddenly happened with all sorts of musicians, and they just kind of swarmed together and started marching up the street. It was ridiculous and funny.
That was the other thing I wanted to add. We were there for Halloween, and there were a lot of pickup bands. You just walk down the street with everybody on their costume, and you see a corner, and all of a sudden there's a band there, and they pass the hat around, and you get to hear some real nice jazz music. And so if you can't make it for Mardi Gras, you might want to check it out for Halloween sometime.
Okay, sounds good.
Sounds fun.
And then Nancy.
Nancy was first.
Nancy was first.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, I have a question and then I have something to say. How many people were on the boat with you?
I think there were about 280 of us.
And we were there the first weekend in December, and we'd gone for brunch at Brennan's, and we came out afterwards, and there was a pickup parade going on with a Santa Claus. It was an alligator dressed in a Santa Claus suit, and people were closing their stores and coming out and joining the parade and pumping their umbrellas, and then it ended up with the Neville brothers on stage singing. It was fabulous and totally unexpected.
Yeah, spontaneity seems to be a watchword of New Orleans entertainment.
Party town, party town.
We were there in May once, and you could still see the beads dripping off the trees from Mardi Gras.
Well, in 1811, 1812, there was an earthquake that affected the Mississippi just north of where you got on the boat, Eileen, and it caused the Mississippi to run backwards for several miles. It rang church bells in Boston.
Interesting.
When was that?
Oh.
1811, 1812.
You don't know about it because it was such an undeveloped area at the time. There weren't that many people.
It was a worse earthquake than San Francisco, but it was rural, so it didn't do the damage.
Fascinating.
The New Madrid earthquake. Look it up on the internet.
Okay.
Yeah.
My husband probably knows about that because he spent 4 years in St. Louis and picked up some history there.
Right.
Yep.
Hey, Pat and Eileen, where are you guys going next?
Ah, well,
We're
you
good.
know about the Criollos?
We're
Well,
good.
Sheila Brennan asked that question, so.
So we're going to go to
Patagonia.
Argentina and Chile. We're going to visit an estancia where they play polo. We're going to visit Buenos Aires, of course. We're going up to wine country, Mendoza. And then we're going over to Patagonia, which is partly in Argentina and partly in Chile. And Pat's going to be our tour guide in Chile. Pat, do you want to say more?
Well, we're going to sail right out into the Straits of Magellan in a tiny sailboat and have a life-threatening adventure. Then we're going to come back on land and sigh. Torres del Paine to a national park that's unbelievable. The winds are so strong there you can sit. in them. So it's going to be a very interesting adventure.
Yes, both ours.
I wanted to talk about our adventure in my last trip to New Orleans was right after Hurricane Katrina. We play I've been playing in women's teams and the volleyball nationals for many years, and we were scheduled to play in New Orleans, and we decided to still hold it at the convention center, still hold the national convention. And we decided to pile into somebody's van and take a ride to see what Hurricane Katrina had done. And we drove, you could sort of follow roads, but everything was just flattened and devastated. And we all just sat looking out and going, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Just, you left us speechless. And we got back to the hotel and we were asking somebody who had been through it. And we said, how do you go on? How do you pick up? And he said, just like my grandma said, we get down on our knees and then we get up again. I still get chills remembering that experience.
So I want to thank everybody for being with us tonight. I hope you enjoyed the adventure down the Mississippi, and I hope you will come back for an amazing story with Argentina and Chile as our focus. As Pat mentioned, it's going to be on the 3rd Friday of the month. And so please mark your calendars, same time. Pat, do you have any final comments to share?
Thank you to Steve Gurney and thank you to Mike Mulroney.
Yes.
Support today.
So it looks like April 16th is the next
April
one.
16th. And thank you, Eileen, for taking us on your river.
It's my pleasure to relive my story again. Thank you all. Have a great week and happy Easter to those of you who celebrate the day. I wish a meaningful Passover to those of you in that tradition. And may you all stay safe during these last days of waiting for our final vaccinations. So, all right. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.